My kitchen was flooding, my patience was non-existent, and the man at my door was 40 minutes late. So I didn't ask for ID. I grabbed the lapels of his $5,000 suit, dragged him inside, and screamed at him to get on his knees. I thought he was the premium plumber I'd hired. I was wrong. The man I'd just manhandled wasn't a technician. He was the Alpha King, the most feared predator on the continent. But he didn't correct me. He didn't arrest me. Instead, he looked at my wet t-shirt, smirked with terrifying amusement, and crawled under my sink. I thought I was ordering a servant around. I had no idea I was accidentally auditioning to be his queen. Welcome back to Raven's Library. Before we dive into today's romance, I want to do a quick roll call. Head down to the comments right now and let me know, where in the world are you listening from? I love seeing how global our community is becoming, so represent your city or country below. And if you hate waiting for the next chapter, hit that join button. Members get early access to new uploads, exclusive loyalty badges next to your name, and a direct line to support the stories you love. Now, get comfortable. Let's get into the story. Chapter 1. The Wet Welcome. "You are late!" I screamed, ripping the door open before the second knock could even finish echoing. I didn't check the peephole. I didn't wait for a greeting. I just saw a wall of broad chest and dark fabric, and my stress-addled brain instantly categorized him. The plumber. Finally. I grabbed the silk lapels of his jacket, fabric that felt suspiciously softer than my own bedsheets, and yanked him across the threshold with every ounce of strength I had. Less standing, more fixing. My kitchen is turning into an aquarium, and if you think I'm paying the full rush fee after you took 40 minutes to get here, you are out of your mind. The man stumbled forward, caught off guard by the sheer force of my desperation. He was massive. He had to be at least 6'4", with shoulders that seemed to block out the hallway light entirely. He froze, his boots landing heavily on my sodden entry rug. For a heartbeat, he didn't speak. He just stared down at my hands, which were currently bunching up his pristine suit jacket like it was a rag. His expression wasn't apologetic. It was stunned, utterly, completely baffled. Then his eyes locked onto mine. They were striking, dark, intelligent, and flecked with a predatory gold that made the hair on my arms stand up. He leaned down, his face inches from mine, and the air around us seemed to instantly grow heavier, charged with a static electricity that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "I have been accused of many things," he murmured, his voice a low, vibrating rumble that I felt in my chest. "But late isn't usually one of them." "I don't care about your track record," I snapped, refusing to let his size or his deep, distractingly smooth voice derail me. I released his lapels and pointed aggressively toward the kitchen, where the sound of hissing water was practically mocking me. "I care that my sub pump is screaming. Look at you. You're dressed for a funeral, not a plumbing job. Did you think white glove service meant you literally couldn't get your hands dirty?" The man blinked, his gaze shifting from my angry finger to the puddle of water expanding toward his expensive leather shoes. Most men would have apologized. Most men would have rushed to the sink. This man just looked amused. A slow, lazy smirk spread across his face, transforming his shock into something far more dangerous. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on the way my wet shirt clung to my skin. It wasn't a lecherous look. It was the look of a wolf spotting a particularly interesting rabbit. "Dirty," he repeated, testing the word like it was a flavor he hadn't tried before. I suppose I can get my hands dirty if the incentive is right. The incentive is that I won't report you to your supervisor for incompetence, I fired back, turning on my heel and splashing toward the kitchen. Move, and take off that jacket. If you ruin it, I am not signing the liability waiver. I dropped to my knees in front of the cabinet, grabbing the wrench I had been uselessly flailing with for the last half hour. Water dripped from the tip of my nose. My socks were squishing. I was a professional event planner. I organized galas for the city's elite. I managed crises for billionaires. And yet, I was being defeated by a U-bend. I paid extra for the expert, I grumbled to myself, wrestling with the slippery metal. And they send me a giant in a suit who moves at the speed of a glacier. I can hear you, a deep voice said from directly behind me. I jumped, nearly dropping the wrench. He was there. He had actually listened. The jacket was gone, draped carefully over a dry patch on the counter. He was unbuttoning his cuffs, rolling up the sleeves of a stark white dress shirt to reveal forearms that were thick, corded with muscle, and dusted with dark hair. He didn't look like a plumber. He looked like a Calvin Klein model who had gotten lost on the way to a shoot. Shift over, he commanded. It wasn't a request. There was a weight to the tone, an authority that made my instincts scream obey. Excuse me? I bristled, wiping wet hair out of my eyes. I'm the client. You don't order me around. He ignored me. He stepped into the puddle, his expensive trousers soaking up the water, and crouched down beside me. The kitchen was small. With him in it, it felt microscopic. His scent hit me instantly. Rain, expensive cedar, and pure, concentrated alpha. You're struggling, he said softly. He reached out, his large hand covering mine on the wrench. His skin was scorching hot. Let go, little boss. Let me handle the pressure. I can handle pressure fine, I argued, though my voice came out breathy. Clearly, he drawled, his gold-flecked eyes dancing with amusement. He gently pried my fingers off the tool. But you're turning it the wrong way. I sat back on my heels, huffing, as he maneuvered his broad shoulders under the sink. He filled the space completely. I watched the muscles in his back shift under the white shirt as he worked. You better fix it, I warned, trying to regain some semblance of control. Or you're not getting a tip. From under the sink, a dark, rich laugh echoed, vibrating against the cabinet wood. Oh, don't worry, he said, his voice dropping an octave, sounding less like a technician and more like a challenge. I plan on earning a very large tip. Chapter 2. Heavy Lifting. Earning a tip implies you actually fix the leak, I retorted, though the slight tremble in my voice betrayed me. It was hard to sound authoritative when a man built like a fortress was crammed into my undersink cabinet, his legs sprawling out across my kitchen floor like he owned the place. Patience, he grunted from the depths of the cupboard. I'm assessing the structural integrity of the seal. He sounded less like a plumber and more like a general contemplating a battlefield strategy. Then, there was a metallic clank, followed by a groan of pipes that sounded dangerously like a death rattle. What was that? I asked, leaning forward. That didn't sound like fixing. The pipe is resistant, he said smoothly. It requires a firm hand. It requires a wrench, I snapped. Are you just using your hands? That's a galvanized steel pipe. Before I could intervene, a sudden, high-pitched hiss cut through the air. A split second later, a jet of icy water shot out from the cabinet, catching me square in the chest. I shrieked, scrambling backward, slipping on the wet tiles. "You broke it! You made it worse!" The man emerged from under the sink, not looking the least bit apologetic. In fact, he was soaking wet, his white shirt now translucent and clinging to a torso that looked like it had been carved out of marble. He wiped water from his face with a slow, deliberate motion, shaking his dark hair like a wolf coming in from the rain. "I didn't break it," he said calmly, water dripping from his strong jawline. "I merely released the pressure. It's part of the process." "Part of the process?" I grabbed a dish towel and threw it at his face. He caught it midair without even blinking. "You're flooding my apartment! Turn off the valve!" He stared at the valve as if it were an alien artifact. For a terrifying second, I realized he had absolutely no idea which handle was the shutoff. "Move!" I hissed, shoving past him. My hip brushed against his thigh, hard muscle beneath damp wool trousers, and a jolt of electricity zipped through me that had nothing to do with the cold water. I reached under the sink, cranked the valve shut, and the spraying stopped. Silence fell over the kitchen, save for the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of water falling from his nose onto the floor. We were both drenched. We were mere inches apart, and he was staring at me with that same maddening, intense hunger. "You," I breathed, poking him in the chest, "are the worst plumber I have ever met. You didn't use a single tool. You just pulled on it until it exploded." "It stopped leaking, didn't it?" he countered, a rogue grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Because I turned the water off. You can't just leave a sink without water." He stood up, towering over me again. The kitchen felt instantly suffocating. He tossed the wet towel onto the counter and leaned in, trapping me between the refrigerator and his massive frame. He smelled like rain and expensive cologne, a scent that was intoxicatingly out of place for a handyman. "I can fix anything, Cleo," he whispered, using my name like a secret. "But sometimes you have to break things down before you can rebuild them." My breath hitched. "I should fire you, right now." "You could," he agreed, his gaze dropping to my lips. "But then who would help you clean up this mess?" I blinked, trying to restart my brain. He was incompetent, arrogant, and clearly overcharging me. But he was also looking at me like I was the only interesting thing he'd seen in a century. "Fine," I managed, stepping out of his personal space before I did something stupid, like lick the water off his collarbone. "Clean it up, then get out." 20 minutes later, the floor was dry. He had somehow managed to brute force the pipe back into place. I assumed by terrifying the metal into submission, because I never saw him use the wrench. I pulled out my wallet, my hands shaking slightly. "What's the damage? Just tell me the total so you can leave." He watched me count out bills, his expression shifting from amusement to something darker, almost offended. "I don't want your money," he said flatly. I paused, holding out a 50. "Excuse me? You did a job. A terrible job, but a job. I pay my debts." He took a step closer, closing his hand over mine, pushing the money back toward my chest. His fingers were rough, warm, and possessive. "I don't need cash," he murmured, his voice low and uncompromising. "If you want to settle the debt, you'll pay me in coffee." "Coffee?" I stared at him. You want a latte instead of a paycheck?
Lek. No sugar. Tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp.
He released my hand, but the ghost of his touch burned.
I have to come back to inspect the seal. Make sure it holds.
And if I say no? I challenged, crossing my arms. He smirked, walking backward toward the door, his eyes never leaving mine.
Then I might just have to come back and break the pipe again. See you at 8, little boss.
Chapter 3. The Coffee Date. At 7:55 a.m., I was pacing my kitchen. At 7:58 a.m., I was aggressively wiping down a counter that was already clean. At 8 a.m. on the dot, the knock came. Precise. Military precision. I opened the door, ready to scold him again, but the words died in my throat. He wasn't in a suit today. He was wearing dark jeans and a black t-shirt that fit him so well it should be illegal. The fabric strained across his chest, highlighting muscles that I had only gotten a glimpse of yesterday. He looked casual, but everything he wore screamed quality. Even his boots looked like they cost more than my car. "You're on time," I said, stepping aside.
I told you,
he said, walking in and immediately filling the space with his presence.
I'm only late when it's worth it.
He walked straight to the kitchen, claiming the space like he had lived there for years. He sat on one of my bar stools, the wood creaking slightly under his weight.
Coffee?
He asked, raising an eyebrow. You're pushy for a handyman, I muttered, pouring 2 mugs. Most people just send an invoice.
I prefer face-to-face transactions.
He took the mug, his large hand dwarfing the ceramic. He took a sip, and for a second, he looked surprised.
This is passable.
Passable? That's imported roast. I leaned against the counter, lowing on my own cup. I need the caffeine. If I don't get fully wired, I'm going to kill someone today. He paused, the mug halfway to his lips.
Trouble at work?
You have no idea. The floodgates opened. I hadn't meant to vent to the handsome, incompetent plumber, but the stress of the upcoming Moonlight Gala was eating me alive. I'm an event planner. I'm currently organizing the biggest event of the year for the Shifter Royal Council, and let me tell you, the client is a nightmare. Cyrus choked slightly on his coffee. He set the mug down carefully.
Is he?
Oh, absolutely, I ranted, throwing my hands up. The Alpha King, King Cyrus. I've never met him, thank God, but his staff sends me these ridiculous lists of demands. Yesterday, they requested that the ballroom be kept at exactly 68 degrees. Do you know how hard that is with 500 warm bodies in a room?
He's a control freak, a tyrant. Probably sits on a throne made of gold and laughs at people like us. Cyrus stared at me. His expression was unreadable, a strange mix of shock and fascination. He swirled the coffee in his mug. Maybe he just likes the cold, he suggested quietly. Wolves run hot. He runs annoying, I corrected. He's got billions of dollars and runs the entire continent, but he's micromanaging the flower arrangements? He needs a hobby, or a girlfriend, someone to tell him to calm down. Cyrus lowered his head, hiding a smile. I suspect telling him to calm down would be dangerous. Please, I scoffed. He's just a man. A very rich, very spoiled man.
If he were here right now, I'd tell him to his face, "Your Majesty, stop acting like a toddler and let me do my job." Cyrus looked up, and the intensity in his gold-flecked eyes stole the breath from my lungs. He looked at me with a sudden fierce pride. "I believe you would," he murmured, "and I think he might actually listen to you." The air shifted. The banter faded into something heavier. I realized I was standing in my pajamas, drinking coffee with a stranger who looked at me like I was a puzzle he was dying to solve. "I don't even know your name," I said softly, the realization hitting me. "You're in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, fixing my pipes, and I don't know who you are." He froze. His hand tightened around the handle of the mug. I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, a war between the truth and the moment we were sharing. "Cyrus," he said, his voice rough. I laughed. "No way. Like the king? That's unfortunate." He winced, just barely. "Just Cyrus. My parents weren't very original." "Well, just Cyrus," I said, putting my mug down. "Does your company have a name, or are you a freelancer?" He cleared his throat, standing up. The playful mood had evaporated, replaced by a tension I couldn't place. He looked like he wanted to say something, to confess something, but he swallowed it down. "I work for the building," he lied. The words sounded heavy on his tongue. "I handle special maintenance for the owner." "The owner?" I raised an eyebrow. "I heard the building was bought by some massive conglomerate last week." "It was," he said, his eyes darkening. "And the owner is very particular about his investments. He likes to keep a close eye on the things he values." He took a step toward me, and I forgot how to breathe. Chapter 4. The Broken Door. He didn't leave. Technically, he left after the coffee, but he came back 2 days later, and the day after that. It started with small things: a flickering light bulb in the hallway, a draft he claimed he needed to investigate near my windows. I wasn't an idiot. I knew things didn't break this often. But every time I opened the door to find Cyrus standing there, filling my doorway with his impossible shoulders and that lazy, knowing smirk, I couldn't bring myself to send him away. Today it was the front door. "It squeaks," he had announced when I opened it, walking past me without waiting for an invitation. He was carrying a tool belt that looked like it had been bought 5 minutes ago. The leather was stiff, pristine, and completely free of scuffs. "It does not squeak," I argued, following him. "It's a perfectly good door." "I heard it from the elevator," he lied effortlessly, kneeling by the hinges. "It's a security risk. If the hinge is loose, anyone could kick it in." "We live in a doorman building, Cyrus. The only person kicking in my door is you." He ignored me, pulling a screwdriver from his belt. He held it like it was a dagger. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms, watching him. There was something undeniably domestic about it. Him on his knees, fixing my apartment, me supervising. It felt comfortable. Too comfortable. "You know," I said, narrowing my eyes as he twisted the screwdriver the wrong way, "for a maintenance man, you have very soft hands." He paused. He didn't look up, but his shoulders tensed. "I wear gloves. And that tool belt still has the price tag sticker on the back loop." He stopped turning the screw. Slowly, he looked over his shoulder. He didn't look embarrassed at being caught. He looked predatory. "You are very observant, Cleo." "I'm an event planner. Details are my life, and the details on you don't add up." I walked closer until I was standing right behind him. "You wear suits that cost more than my rent.
You have a tool belt you've never used, and you've been fixing this door for 20 minutes, and now it's actually crooked." He stood up. He turned to face me, tossing the screwdriver onto the entry table with a clatter. "Maybe I'm not here for the door," he said softly. The space between us vanished. He was so tall I had to crane my neck to look him in the eye. The air crackled with that familiar static. "Then why are you here?" I whispered. "Because if you're trying to scam me for hourly labor costs, I'm on to you." He chuckled, a dark sound that vibrated through the floorboards. He reached out, his hand hovering near my waist, not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his palm. "I'm here because you're the only person in this city who yells at me," he admitted, his voice dropping to a husky whisper. "And I find it addicting." "You have a masochism kink?" I asked, trying to keep the banter alive to hide the fact that my heart was hammering against my ribs. "No," he said, stepping closer, forcing me to back up until my shoulders hit the freshly fixed door. "I have a honesty kink. Everyone else lies to me, Cleo. They tell me what I want to hear. You tell me I'm incompetent and annoying." "You are incompetent," I reminded him, my voice trembling. "I know." He leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. "I'm the worst handyman you've ever hired." I shivered. Terrible. 1 star on Yelp. "But," he whispered, his lips grazing my jawline, sending shockwaves down my spine. "I'm your favorite." I opened my mouth to argue, to deny it, to tell him to get out. But the words wouldn't come, because he was right. I waited for his knock every morning. I made extra coffee. I was falling for a man who couldn't fix a sink to save his life. And I was terrified. "Cyrus," I breathed, my hand involuntarily coming up to rest on his chest. Through the black t-shirt, his heart was beating a heavy, rhythmic thud. It was fast as mine. "Tell me to leave," he challenged, his forehead resting against mine. "Tell me to go fix someone else's door, and I will walk away." I looked up into those gold-flecked eyes. I knew I should. I knew there were a million red flags waving in my face. "Don't go," I whispered. He let out a breath that sounded like relief, or maybe surrender. His hand moved to my waist, his grip tightening, pulling me flush against him. "Good," he growled, "because I wasn't going to leave anyway." Chapter 5. 2 worlds collide. The moment was perfect. His hand was on my waist. The air was thick with tension. And I was about 2 seconds away from making a very bad decision with a man whose last name I didn't even know. Then, my phone rang. It wasn't a normal ring. It was the specific, ear-splitting siren I had assigned to the Palace Liaison. I groaned, dropping my forehead against Cyrus's chest. The vibration of his chuckle rumbled against my skin, sending a fresh wave of heat through me that I absolutely did not have time for. "Ignore it," he murmured into my hair, his grip not loosening. "I can't," I sighed, pulling back reluctantly. The loss of his warmth was immediate and jarring. "It's the client from hell. If I don't answer, they'll probably send the royal guard to drag me to the dungeon." I grabbed the phone off the counter. Cyrus leaned back against the doorframe, crossing his arms over that distractingly broad chest. his expression darkening as he watched me answer. "Cleo speaking," I said,
putting on my best I am calm and professional voice. "Ms. Amon?" The liaison's voice was screechy and frantic. "There's been an update to the king's requirements for the gala." "An update?" I pinched the bridge of my nose. "The gala is in 4 days, Brenda. The vendors are locked. We can't update anything." "The king requires that the ballroom floor be repolished. He finds the current wax too reflective. He dislikes the glare." I stared at the phone. "Too reflective? Brenda, it's a ballroom. It's supposed to shine. If we strip the wax now, the floor will look dull, and it will cost $6,000 in overtime labor." "The king is adamant," she insisted. "Also, he wants the orchids swapped for white lilies. He feels orchids are too aggressive." I hung up the phone and let out a scream of frustration that probably woke the neighbors. "Aggressive flowers!" I yelled at the ceiling. "Who is this man? Does he just sit on his throne thinking of ways to torture me? Oh, the floor is too shiny. My eyes are too sensitive." I turned to Cyrus, expecting him to look confused. Instead, he was looking at his shoes, a muscle feathering in his jaw. He pulled a sleek black phone from his back pocket. "Maybe he's just particular," Cyrus suggested, his voice tight. "He's a tyrant," I corrected, pacing the kitchen. "He's a spoiled, out-of-touch alpha who has probably never worked a day in his life. I am drowning, Cyrus. I have 500 guests arriving in 96 hours, and now I have to find a floor-stripping crew at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday." Cyrus watched me spiral. He typed something quickly on his phone, his thumbs moving with a speed that belied his casual posture. "What if—" Cyrus started slowly, pocketing his phone. "What if the king changes his mind?" "He won't," I snapped, grabbing my laptop. "Brenda said he was adamant." Ping! My phone buzzed again. A text from Brenda. I looked at the screen and froze. My jaw dropped. "What?" Cyrus asked, stepping closer, his eyes innocent. I don't believe it." I looked up at him. "Brenda just texted. She said the king reconsidered. The floor is fine. And keep the orchids." Cyrus shrugged, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind my ear. "See, maybe he's not so bad. Maybe he just needed a little perspective." "It's a miracle," I breathed, letting the tension drain out of my shoulders. I looked at Cyrus, really looked at him. He was standing in my kitchen, looking out of place and perfect all at once. Every time he was around, the chaos seemed to settle. "You," I said, pointing a finger at his chest. "Me? You're my good luck charm. Every time I think I'm going to crash and burn, you show up to fix my door or my sink, and suddenly the universe cuts me a break." Cyrus's expression softened, a look of profound, aching guilt flashing through his eyes before he masked it with a smile. "I'm glad I can be of service, Cleo," he whispered, stepping into my space again. "But be careful. Relying on luck is dangerous." "I'm not relying on luck," I said softly, realizing with a jolt that it was true. "I'm relying on you." Chapter 6. The Jealous Ex. "I need food," I announced 20 minutes later. The adrenaline dump from the near catastrophe with the floor wax had left me starving. "And since you saved me from a mental breakdown, I'm buying." Cyrus looked wary. "Buying? Dinner. Don't look so panicked. I'm not taking you anywhere fancy. I know you're on a budget." He opened his mouth to argue, probably to tell me he owned half the city blocks we were about to walk past, but he closed it. He let me lead him out of the apartment building. The evening air was crisp. Walking next to Cyrus felt significant. He walked on the street side of the sidewalk without making a show of it, his body naturally shielding me from the traffic. People looked at him. Men stepped out of his way instinctively, sensing the alpha power rolling off him in waves. Women looked at him, then at me, then back at him with envy.
I felt a surge of possessiveness I had no right to feel. Cleo? The voice was like nails on a chalkboard. I froze. Standing near the entrance of the gourmet grocery store down the block was Julian, my ex. Julian was a beta with alpha aspirations. He wore suits that were too shiny, drove a car he couldn't afford, and had broken up with me because I was too career-focused and not supportive enough of his vision being a failed cryptocurrency startup. "Julian?" I said stiffly. "Hello?" Julian scanned me, sneering, before his eyes landed on Cyrus. He took in Cyrus's plain black t-shirt, his worn jeans, and the tool belt Cyrus had forgotten to take off. Julian laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. "This is new," Julian said, gesturing at Cyrus with a manicured hand. "Since when are you dating the help, Cleo? I thought you had standards." I felt Cyrus go still beside me. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I didn't look at him, but I could feel the violence radiating off him. It was a cold, silent, terrifying pressure. "Excuse me?" I stepped forward, blocking Julian's view of Cyrus. "I'm just saying." Julian smirked, looking at Cyrus with mock pity. "He looks like he charges by the hour. Can he even afford to take you to dinner? Or are you paying for him, like you used to pay for everything?" Red blinded my vision. Julian could insult me all he wanted, but insulting Cyrus? Insulting the man who had spent the last week fixing my apartment and listening to me vent solely because he wanted to be near me? "Watch your mouth, Julian," I snapped, my voice shaking with rage. "Cyrus is twice the man you will ever be. He's a laborer, Cleo. Look at his hands. Rough, dirty. His hands work." I hissed, taking a step closer to my ex, forcing him to step back. "Unlike yours, which have never done a hard day's labor in their life. Cyrus is kind, he's strong, and he shows up. He fixes things while you just break them. Cleo, be reasonable."
"No," I cut him off. "You're not in his league, Julian. You're not even playing the same sport. So take your cheap suit and your bad attitude and get out of my way." Julian looked stunned. I had never yelled at him like that when we were dating. He looked past me to Cyrus, expecting the big man to be cowering. Cyrus wasn't cowering. He was staring at Julian with eyes that were glowing a faint, lethal gold. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The look promised absolute annihilation. Julian swallowed hard, his survival instincts finally kicking in. "Whatever. You deserve each other." He scurried away. I stood there, breathing hard, my hands balled into fists. I felt a large, warm hand touch my shoulder. I turned around. Cyrus was looking down at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. It was intense, burning, and terrifyingly focused. It wasn't gratitude. It was ownership. "You defended me," he said, his voice rough, like gravel grinding together. "Of course I did," I muttered, smoothing my shirt. "He's an idiot." "He called me a laborer. He said I was beneath you." "He's wrong," I said firmly, looking him in the eye. "Status doesn't make a man, Cyrus. Character does. And I'd rather have you in a t-shirt than him in a crown." Cyrus flinched. His pupils dilated until his eyes were almost black. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. "You have no idea," he whispered, "what you just did." Chapter 7. The Cheap Date. "Burgers," I declared, dragging Cyrus toward the neon sign of Joe's Greasy Spoon. "Best fries in the city, and they don't cost a fortune." Cyrus looked up at the flickering sign, then at the grease-stained window. He looked like a panther being asked to enter a petting zoo. "This establishment looks
Rustic, he noted diplomatically. It's cheap and delicious. Come on. I ushered him into a booth in the back. The vinyl seat was taped with duct tape. The table was sticky. Cyrus sat down, and I swear the booth groaned in protest. He was simply too big for the world I lived in. His knees bumped mine under the table, and he didn't pull away. "I'll order," I said, grabbing the plastic menu. "I know money is probably tight for you right now, especially with the building ownership change, so don't worry about the bill. My treat." Cyrus stared at me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked physically pained. "Cleo," he started slowly, "I have money." I know. You work hard, but living in this city is expensive. Save your cash for rent, or for a new wrench, since you don't seem to own any." I winked at him. He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You really think I'm broke?" "I think you're honest labor," I said softly, reaching across the sticky table to cover his hand with mine. "And I respect that more than anything." He looked down at our joined hands. His thumb rubbed against my knuckles, a soothing, rhythmic motion. "I'm not who you think I am," he said quietly. The humor was gone. His face was serious, his brow furrowed. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Are you in trouble? With the law?" "No," he said quickly. "I mean, I'm not used to this. Someone taking care of me. Usually everyone expects me to pay, to provide, to be the one in charge." "Well, tonight you're off the clock," I said firmly. "Tonight, you're just Cyrus, and I'm by— Look at your t-shirt. It has a hole in the hem." He looked down. There was, indeed, a tiny tear near the waist, probably from when he snagged it on my door hinge earlier. "If you were a secret billionaire," I teased, leaning forward, "you'd buy a new shirt, and you wouldn't be fixing my sink for free coffee." He stared at me, his golden eyes searching my face for any sign of deceit. He found none, just my blind, stubborn belief in the lie he had told me. He let out a long sigh, slouching back against the cracked vinyl. He looked defeated, but also happy. "You're right," he lied, the words sounding like they tasted like ash. "I wouldn't be here if I was rich." "Exactly," I smiled. "So eat your fries and let me spoil you for once." He picked up a fry, but he didn't eat it. He looked at me with a longing so profound it made my chest ache. "You already are," he whispered. "You have no idea how much of a luxury this is." "What, the fries?" "No," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. "Being seen as just a man. Just Cyrus." I felt the air shift again. The playfulness vanished. "Is being just Cyrus enough?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He reached across the table, grabbing my chin gently, tilting my face up. "With you?" he said, his thumb brushing my bottom lip. "It's the only thing I want to be. But Cleo, the world doesn't always let us choose who we are." "Then we ignore the world," I said fiercely. He shook his head slowly, a sad smile playing on his lips. "If only it were that simple." Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face hardened instantly into a mask of cold authority. The handyman was gone. The king was back, even if I didn't know it yet. "I have to go," he said abruptly, sliding out of the booth. "What? Now? The food hasn't even arrived." "Emergency," he said, not meeting my eyes. He pulled a wad of cash from his pocket, way too much cash, and slammed it on the table. "This should cover it." "Cyrus!" I called out as he strode toward the door. He paused at the exit, looking back at me. He looked like a man tearing himself in two. "I'll see you at the gala, Cleo," he said. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with 2 milkshakes and a pile of $100 bills on a sticky table. Chapter 8. The Late Night Call. I stared at the pile of cash Cyrus had left on the sticky diner table. It was obscene. $500 bills for 2 burgers and 2 milkshakes we hadn't even touched. I didn't take it. I left it there as a tip for the stunned waitress, walked home in a daze, and spent the next 3 hours pacing my living room, oscillating between fury and worry. Who carries that kind of cash? Drug dealers? Mob enforcers? Or just a man who is terrible at math? Then, the sky broke open. It started with a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards, followed by a crack of thunder so loud it set off car alarms 3 streets over. I froze. My breath hitched. I am a 30-year-old woman who manages million-dollar budgets and yells at union bosses. But thunder? Thunder turns me into a shivering mess. It's irrational, it's embarrassing, and it's uncontrollable. Another crack. The lights flickered. I scrambled onto the sofa, wrapping myself in 3 blankets, squeezing my eyes shut. Breathe, Cleo. It's just noise. Boom! A whimper escaped my throat. I fumbled for my phone. I didn't think. I just scrolled to the last number dialed. Cyrus, I whispered as it rang. He picked up on the first ring. Cleo? His voice was different, harder. In the background, I could hear low murmurs, the rustle of papers, and the distinct sound of a heavy door slamming shut. It sounded like he was in a boardroom or a bunker. Is everything all right? A flash of lightning lit up my living room. I flinched. It's the storm. I can't do the noise. Silence on the line. Then I heard him moving. Fast. Footsteps echoing on marble. A voice in the background shouted, "Sire, the council is not dismissed," Cyrus barked, his voice distant from the phone but terrifyingly authoritative. Then he was back, his voice close and urgent. "Cleo, talk to me. Are you safe?" "I'm fine," I stammered, feeling foolish. I shouldn't have called. You're working." "I'm leaving. Stay on the line." "Cyrus, don't. It's pouring rain. I'm just being a baby." "I said, stay on the line." I heard a car engine roar to life, a deep, guttural growl that sounded expensive. "Tell me about the sink," he commanded. "Is it leaking?" "What?" "Focus on my voice. Tell me about the sink. Tell me about the gala. Tell me anything. Just keep talking." He kept me on the phone for 12 minutes. He made me list every flower arrangement I had ordered. He made me describe the color of the napkins. And then there was a pounding on my door. I ran to open it. Cyrus stood there, drenched for the 2nd time in a week. He wasn't wearing the t-shirt from the diner. He was wearing a formal white dress shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, and his breathing was heavy. He didn't say a word. He stepped inside, kicked the door shut, and pulled me into his arms. He was cold from the rain, but solid as a rock. I buried my face in his wet shirt, inhaling the scent of cedar and rain. The thunder cracked again, but with his arms around me, it felt distant, muffled. "I've got you," he rumbled against my hair. "It's just noise. It can't touch you." He walked me to the couch,
refusing to let go. He sat down and pulled me into his lap, wrapping the blanket around both of us. "You left work," I mumbled, guilt gnawing at me. "I heard people. Was it your boss?" Cyrus stiffened slightly. "Something like that." "You're going to get fired." "Let them try," he growled darkly. We stayed like that for hours. The storm raged, but Cyrus was a fortress. He ran his hand up and down my spine, humming a low, wordless tune that vibrated through his chest and settled deep in my bones. Eventually, the adrenaline faded and exhaustion took over. My eyes grew heavy. "Sleep, Cleo," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." I drifted off, feeling safe for the first time in my life. Sometime later, it must have been deep in the night, I half woke up. The room was silent. The storm had passed. I felt Cyrus shift, his lips brushing my forehead. "I would burn the kingdom for you," he whispered into the dark, his voice thick with an emotion I was too sleepy to name. "Sleep well, my queen." I thought I was dreaming. Chapter 9. The Invitation. When I woke up, the smell of bacon was wafting from the kitchen. I sat up, blinking. The blanket was tucked tightly around me. Sunlight was streaming through the windows. For a second, I thought I had imagined the storm, the late-night rescue, the "my queen" comment. Then I saw him. Cyrus was at my stove. He was shirtless. I stopped breathing. His back was a landscape of muscle, broad shoulders tapering down to a narrow waist, the skin tanned and scarred in faint white lines that looked like old battle wounds. He was flipping bacon with a focus that suggested the bacon might attack him if he looked away. "You're still here," I croaked. He turned around. The sight of his chest, defined pectorals, a dusting of dark hair trailing down to the waistband of his jeans, made my mouth go dry. "I promised I wouldn't leave," he said simply. He held up a plate. "I made food, I think." I walked into the kitchen, trying desperately to keep my eyes on his face. "You think?" "I don't cook often," he admitted. "Usually meals are provided." "By who? The building management?" I teased, grabbing a piece of bacon. It was burnt on one side and raw on the other. "Cyrus, you are a man of many talents, but culinary arts is not one of them." He grinned, leaning his hip against the counter. "I'm good at other things." The air sizzled. I chewed the burnt bacon, ignoring the implication. "So," I said, leaning against the fridge, "the gala is in 3 days." Cyrus's smile faded slightly. "Right, the gala." "I have to work it," I sighed, sliding down to sit on the floor. "I have to wear a ball gown and a headset. Everyone is going to be there. The council, the elite, couples dancing, drinking champagne, and I'll be the one yelling at the catering staff." Cyrus crouched down in front of me. "You make the magic happen, Cleo. Without you, they're just people standing in a room." "I know, but just once." I looked at him. "I wish I had a date. Someone to sneak me a drink. Someone to tell me I look pretty even though I'm sweating through my silk." Cyrus's eyes softened. "You'll be the most beautiful woman there." "You haven't seen the dress." "I don't need to." I bit my lip. It was a crazy idea. He was a handyman. He probably didn't even own a tuxedo. And he'd be terrifyingly out of place among the snobs and royals. But the thought of facing that room without him made my stomach hurt. "You should come," I blurted out. Cyrus froze. "Come?"
To the gala?
Yes, as my +1. I know it's fancy, and the people are awful, but we could hide in the back. You could help me eat the leftover appetizers. Cyrus stared at me. His expression was a kaleidoscope of shock, panic, and overwhelming longing.
Cleo, he said slowly, I don't think I fit in that world.
You fit wherever you want to fit, I said stubbornly. And you fit with me. Unless you're embarrassed to be seen with the hired help.
Never,
He growled. The word was instant, visceral.
I would stand next to you in a burning building.
Okay then, it's a date. I smiled, though my heart was pounding. Do you have a suit? Or should I rent one? He looked down at his jeans.
I think I can find something suitable.
Good, because if you show up in that tool belt, security will tackle you. He laughed, but it sounded strained. He reached out, taking my hand, his thumb tracing the veins in my wrist.
I will be there, he promised, his voice heavy with a vow I didn't understand. I wouldn't miss seeing you in your element for the world, even if it kills me. Don't be dramatic, I laughed. It's just a party. No one is going to die. Cyrus looked at me with sad, ancient eyes. Let's hope not. Chapter 10. The Close Call. The next day, disaster struck. We were short on the midnight velvet table runners. The supplier had messed up the order, and the only replacement fabric was currently sitting in the storage vaults of the royal palace. I have to go pick it up, I told Brenda over the phone. Yes, I know civilians aren't usually allowed in the service wing. Just get me a pass. An hour later, I was walking through the back corridors of the Obsidian Palace. It was intimidating. The ceilings were 20 feet high, the floors were marble, and every 10 feet there was a guard standing statue still, armed with a spear that looked very sharp and very real. I clutched my clipboard to my chest, trying to look like I belonged. Delivery for the gala, I muttered to Regard. He nodded stiffly, his eyes widening slightly when he looked at me. Weird, I thought. Do I have spinach in my teeth? I turned a corner and found myself in a long hallway lined with oil paintings. They were portraits of the lineage of Alpha Kings, stern men with cruel eyes and heavy crowns. I walked past them, glancing idly. King Torin, King Thorian, King... I stopped. The portrait at the end of the hall was huge. It depicted a man sitting on a throne of black iron. He was wearing a military uniform covered in medals. He had a heavy fur cloak draped over one shoulder. But the face... I stepped closer, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The man in the painting had a beard, a thick, groomed beard that hid his jawline, and his hair was longer. But the eyes, those gold-flecked, intelligent, predatory eyes. No, I whispered. I looked at the nose, the slight crook in the bridge, exactly like Cyrus's. I looked at the hands resting on the arms of the throne, large, scarred. It looks exactly like him. But it couldn't be. Cyrus was a handyman who didn't know how to use a wrench. Cyrus ate greasy burgers and burnt bacon. Cyrus was sweet and clumsy and hated noise. The man in this painting looked like he ate nations for breakfast. "You cannot be here!" The shout made me jump a foot in the air. 2 guards were rushing toward me. They didn't look angry. They looked terrified. "Ma'am," the first guard panted, skidding to a halt. He looked at me, then at the painting, then back at me with sheer panic. "This area is restricted, extremely restricted." I was just looking for the storage vault," I stammered, pointing at the painting. "Who is that?" The guard swallowed hard. That is His Majesty, the King.
He looks... I trailed off. He looks like my boyfriend.
He looks powerful, the guard supplied quickly, sweating. Please, ma'am, we must escort you to the exit. If he finds out you were wandering unescorted...
If who finds out?
The King, the guard whispered. He is very protective of his privacy.
They practically hustled me down the hall. They treated me like I was made of glass, ushering me out the service door with trembling hands. I stood in the parking lot, clutching the fabric samples I had eventually been given. My hands were shaking. I thought of Cyrus, the way he had dodged questions about his job, the way he had left the diner when his phone buzzed, the way he had commanded the boss on the phone during the storm. No, I told myself firmly. That's insane. It's a coincidence. A shifter thing. Maybe they're cousins. But as I walked to my car, the image of those gold-flecked eyes in the painting burned in my mind. He has the same chin, I whispered to the empty air. And the same scar on his thumb. I shook my head, unlocking my car. Impossible, I decided. Cyrus is a plumber, and I am just paranoid. But for the first time, the doubt didn't go away. It settled in my gut, cold and heavy, waiting for the gala to prove me right or wrong. Chapter 11. The Fixing You Moment. The night before the gala, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't even breathe properly. I was a machine, fueled by caffeine and sheer, unadulterated panic. My apartment looked like a war zone. Fabric swatches, seating charts, and invoices were plastered over every surface. I was sitting on the floor in the center of it all, clutching a bottle of wine I hadn't opened because I couldn't find the corkscrew in the mess. When the knock came, I didn't get up. "It's open!" I yelled at the door. "Unless you're a murderer, then go away. I don't have time to be murdered tonight." The door opened. Cyrus walked in. He took one look at me, hair in a messy bun, mascara smudged under my eyes, wearing sweatpants and a silk blouse, and stopped. He didn't smile. He didn't make a joke about the mess. His expression was grave. "Cleo," he said, his voice low. "Don't," I warned, pointing a finger at him. "Don't ask me how I am. I am one minor inconvenience away from committing arson. The florist canceled the white lilies. Canceled. Do you know what that means? It means I have to find 500 stems of something white by tomorrow morning." Cyrus stepped over a pile of RSVP cards. "I can make a call." "No, you can't make a call," I snapped, tears prickling my eyes. "You're a handyman, Cyrus. You fix doors. You can't fix a floral shortage on a national holiday. Just stop trying to help. You can't help." I buried my face in my hands. The stress was crushing me. I felt small. I felt like a fraud. I felt like the girl who wasn't good enough for the elite world I worked in. "I can't do this," I whispered into my palms. "I'm going to fail. The king is going to hate it. The council is going to fire me. And I'm going to end up living in a box." A sudden, sharp hiss came from the kitchen. I froze. I looked up. Water was pooling on the floor. The sink. The damn sink was leaking again. That was it. The dam broke. "Are you kidding me?" I screamed, scrambling to my feet.
I grabbed the unopened wine bottle like a club. Now? You break now? I marched toward the kitchen, blind with rage. I hate this apartment. I hate this job. I hate... I was intercepted. Cyrus caught me before I reached the puddle. He didn't just stop me. He spun me around and lifted me up, depositing me onto the dry counter with effortless strength. He stood between my legs, his hands gripping my waist, effectively trapping me. "Let me go!" I pushed against his chest. "I have to fix the sink. I have to fix the flowers. I have to fix everything because nobody else will." "Cleo, stop." "I can't stop. If I stop, everything falls apart." "Look at me." "No, I need to—" "Cleo." The alpha command in his voice was unmistakable. It wasn't a shout. It was a vibration that went straight to my marrow. My mouth snapped shut. I looked at him. His eyes were burning. He wasn't looking at the sink. He was looking at me, like I was the only thing in the universe that mattered. "The sink is irrelevant," he said, his voice rough with restrained intensity. He reached up, his thumbs wiping the angry tears from my cheeks. "The flowers don't matter. The gala doesn't matter." "It does," I whimpered. "It's my job. It's who I am. I fix things." "You fix everything for everyone else," he corrected, leaning in until his forehead rested against mine. "You carry the weight of the world, and you think you have to do it alone. You think if you crack, you're weak." "I am weak," I whispered. "You are the strongest thing I have ever known," he growled. "But you are breaking." "Then let me down so I can fix the leak." "No." His hands tightened on my waist, pulling me flush against him. The heat of his body was overwhelming. "To hell with the leak. To hell with the sink. I'm fixing you first." My breath hitched. "How?" "By reminding you that you aren't alone." He didn't give me time to argue. He crashed his lips onto mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate. It was hungry. It was a man claiming something he had wanted since the moment I dragged him through my front door. I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer, melting into the solid, unshakable reality of him. Chapter 12. The Confession. That doesn't happen. The kiss ended, but neither of us moved. I was still sitting on the counter, my legs wrapped around his waist. His forehead was resting against mine, our breathing ragged and synchronized in the quiet apartment. The sink was still hissing in the background, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't care. I felt grounded, anchored. "Better?" Cyrus asked, his voice a low rumble in his chest. I let out a shaky laugh, tracing the line of his collarbone with my thumb. "Is that part of your standard service package? Kissing the client until she forgets about plumbing disasters?" "Only for the premium clients," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. He pulled back slightly, looking into my eyes. The playfulness that usually danced in his gold-flecked gaze was gone, replaced by a heavy, somber seriousness. He looked like a man standing on a precipice. "Cleo," he started, and his voice cracked. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. The tone was ominous. It was the tone men used when they were about to say, "I'm married," or "I'm moving to Alaska." "Talk about what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "About me." He took my hands in his, looking down at my fingers. "About who I am. This past week, with you, It's been a lie. Or parts of it have been. I froze. What are you saying? I'm not who you think I am, he said, the words rushing out. I'm not a handyman. I don't work for the building. I have responsibilities, obligations, a life that is complicated and dangerous and very, very different from yours. I stared at him. My mind raced. Was he a criminal? A spy? Are you in debt? I asked softly. He blinked. What? Is that it? You're in trouble with money? Or maybe you have a record? I squeezed his hands. Cyrus, listen to me. I don't care. He looked stunned. You don't? No, I said firmly. I don't care if you're broke. I don't care if you're unemployed. I don't care if you live in your car. I reached up, cupping his face. I fell for the guy who brings me coffee and listens to me rant. I fell for the guy who held me through a thunderstorm. Status doesn't matter to me. Money doesn't matter. You matter. Cyrus looked like I had just stabbed him. He opened his mouth to correct me, to tell me that the problem wasn't a lack of money, but an obscene excess of it. He wanted to tell me he wasn't below me. He was so far above me that social protocol demanded I bow. But he couldn't. I saw the words die in his throat. He realized that if he told me the truth right now, that he was the king, he would destroy the very thing I just praised. I loved him because he was normal. If he revealed he was royalty, he feared I would look at him the way everyone else did, with fear or greed or distance. You really don't care? He whispered, his voice sounding hollow. Not a bit, I promised, kissing him softly. We'll figure it out, whatever it is. Just be my date tomorrow, please. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who had just won the war but lost his soul. Okay, he breathed. I'll be there, I promise. He pulled away from me, gently helping me down from the counter. He looked at the door. I have to go, he said. I have to fix something before tomorrow. Will you be okay? I don't know, he admitted, turning to look at me one last time. But I'll see you at the ball, Cleo. Save a dance for the handyman. He walked out. The door clicked shut. I touched my lips, smiling like a fool, completely unaware that he hadn't gone to fix a pipe. He had gone to prepare a kingdom for its new queen. Chapter 13. The Night of the Gala. The Moonlight Gala was a sensory overload of gold, silk, and pretension. The grand ballroom of the Obsidian Palace was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the vaulted ceiling. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ozone. 500 of the continent's most powerful shifters were mingling, judging, and drinking champagne that cost more than my car. And I was sweating through my dress. Table 7 needs more water, I barked into my headset, adjusting the clipboard in my hand. And tell the orchestra to slow down. It's a waltz, not a sprint. I was wearing a floor-length gown, a deep midnight blue that hugged my curves, but I felt like an imposter. I wasn't a guest. I was the help. I stood in the shadows near the catering entrance, scanning the crowd. Where was he? It was 8:15 p.m. The doors had opened at 8. He's coming, I muttered to myself, checking my phone for the 10th time. No texts. He promised. A group of high society women drifted past me, their laughter sounding like breaking glass. Have you seen the king? One of them asked, fanning herself. Rumor has it he's bringing a consort tonight. Doubtful, another sniffed. King Cyrus hasn't looked at a woman in 5 years. He's probably locked in his war room, brooding. He cares more about borders than balls. I bristled. You don't know him, I thought fiercely. He's not brooding. He's funny. He's kind. And he's probably just stuck in traffic in a rented tuxedo. Ms. Eamon! Brenda appeared at my elbow, looking like she was about to hyperventilate. The procession is starting. Is everything ready? It's ready, Brenda. Breathe. The king is entering in 2 minutes. 2 minutes! Oh God, do I look okay? You look fine. Go stand by the podium. I retreated further into the shadows. My heart was pounding, not because of the king. I didn't care about some stuffy monarch, but because Cyrus was missing. Please don't stand me up, I prayed. Please don't let me down. I checked the time, 8:28 p.m. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. 500 people went silent instantly. The air grew heavy, charged with the sheer weight of alpha power approaching. The heavy double doors at the top of the grand staircase groaned open. A trumpet blast cut through the silence, sharp and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen," the royal announcer's voice boomed, echoing off the marble walls. "Distinguished guests, pack alphas and dignitaries." I stood on my toes, craning my neck, looking for a tall, messy-haired man in a cheap suit trying to sneak in the back. "Please rise," the announcer continued, "for the Alpha of Alphas, the High Sovereign of the Obsidian Crown." The crowd bowed, every head lowered. "Presenting His Majesty, King Cyrus." I rolled my eyes. Finally, get the entrance over with so I can find my boyfriend. I looked up at the top of the stairs, expecting to see the bearded old tyrant from the painting I had seen in the hallway. A man stepped into the spotlight. He wasn't old. He wasn't bearded. He was tall, broad-shouldered. He was wearing a military dress uniform, black with gold piping, that fit him like a second skin. A heavy golden chain of office rested on his shoulders. A crown of dark iron sat upon his head. He looked terrifying. He looked regal. He looked exactly like the man who had fixed my sink yesterday. My clipboard slipped from my fingers. It hit the floor with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. The king looked down. Across the sea of bowed heads, across the distance of the ballroom, his eyes locked onto mine. They were gold. They were apologetic. And they were the eyes of the man I loved. Chapter 14. The Walk. The sound of my clipboard hitting the floor echoed like a gunshot. Clatter smack. In a room filled with 500 people holding their breath, it might as well have been a bomb detonation. But no one looked at the clipboard. Everyone was looking at the king, and the king was looking at me. Time warped. It slowed down to a thick, agonizing sludge. My brain was trying to process the visual data and failing miserably. I was looking at Cyrus, my Cyrus. The man who had sat on my counter eating burnt bacon in his boxers this morning. The man who had groaned when I made him watch a romantic comedy. The man who had held me through a thunderstorm because I was scared of the noise. But he wasn't Cyrus the handyman. He was standing at the top of the grand velvet staircase, framed by gold leaf and crystal. He wore a crown of dark iron that looked heavy enough to crush a skull. His shoulders, covered in the severe black fabric of a military dress uniform, were adorned with golden epaulets and a sash of crimson silk. He wasn't just a man. He was an institution. He was the law. He was the apex predator of the entire continent. And I had made him fix my toilet. Oh my God, I thought, my knees turning to water. I yelled at the Alpha King. I poked him in the chest. I told him he was incompetent. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. I wasn't just embarrassed. I was terrified. I had treated the most powerful being in our world like a servant.
I had unknowingly committed treason about 12 times a day for the last week. The king didn't move. He stood there, his hand gripping the hilt of the ceremonial sword at his hip, his knuckles white. The announcer cleared his throat nervously. The crowd shifted, sensing that something was wrong. The king was supposed to descend, walk to the throne, and sit. He wasn't supposed to be staring at a random event planner hiding in the shadows near the kitchen door. Then, he moved. He didn't walk toward the throne. He didn't acknowledge the council members, bowing low in the front row.
He didn't even look at the cameras flashing in the distance. He walked down the stairs, his eyes locked on me with a terrifying, singular focus. Thud. 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 His boots hit the marble steps with a heavy, rhythmic cadence, the sound of authority. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Dukes and duchesses, alphas and lunas, people who were worth billions, scrambled out of his way, pressing themselves against the walls to clear a path. They looked confused. They whispered behind their fans, "Where is he going? Is there a security breach?" I wanted to run. My feet urged me to turn around and sprint through the kitchen, out the service exit, and keep running until I reached a non-extradition country. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the sheer gravity of his approach. He reached the bottom of the stairs. He kept coming. He strode across the polished floor, the floor I had fought to keep waxed, ignoring the gasps of the elite. He stopped 3 feet in front of me. Up close, the illusion of Cyrus the handyman shattered completely. He radiated power. The air around him crackled with alpha energy so potent it made my teeth ache. He smelled the same, cedar and rain. But now it was mixed with the metallic scent of fear coming from everyone else in the room. The silence was deafening. 500 pairs of eyes were burning into my back. Cyrus looked down at me. His face was pale. The gold flecks in his eyes were swirling violently. He didn't look like a king about to punish a subject. He looked like a man who knew he had just driven his car off a cliff. "Cleo," he said. His voice wasn't the soft rumble I knew. It was projected, commanding, the voice of a ruler. But I heard the crack in it. I took a step back, my heel crunching on the plastic corner of my falling clipboard. "You lied," I whispered. My voice was so small I barely heard it myself. "You lied about everything." "I can explain," he started, reaching a hand out toward me. The hand was gloved in white silk, the hand of a stranger. I flinched. The movement was instinctive, a recoil from a predator I didn't recognize. Cyrus froze. The sight of me flinching away from him hit him like a physical blow. His hand dropped, his jaw tightened. "Don't," I choked out, fighting the tears that were burning my eyes. "Don't touch me, Your Majesty." The title hung in the air between us, heavy and poisonous. It wasn't a sign of respect. It was an accusation. Chapter 15. The Humiliation. "Cleo, please." Cyrus stepped closer, invading my personal space, ignoring the hundreds of witnesses gasping at his breach of protocol. "It's not what you think. Just listen to me." "Not what I think?" My shock was rapidly curdling into anger, hot, defensive fury. "I think you're the king. I think you own this palace. I think you spent the last week playing blue-collar cosplay with me because you were bored." "It wasn't a game," he hissed, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper meant only for me. "I never played with you." "You pretended to be a plumber," I hissed back, forgetting that I was yelling at a monarch. You let me buy you dinner because I thought you were broke. You let me lecture you about you. Was it funny? Did you go back to your throne room and laugh about the stupid human girl who thought she could boss the Alpha King around? No. The word ripped out of him, loud enough to echo. The crowd flinched. Cyrus didn't care. He looked frantic. I never laughed. It was the only time I felt real. I wanted to be just a man for you. Well, congratulations, I said, my voice trembling. You fooled me. I fell for the man. But that man doesn't exist, does he? I looked at his crown. I looked at the medals on his chest. I looked at the terrified faces of the people around us. This is who you are, I said, gesturing to the opulent room. And I'm just the hired help. You are not help, he growled, his eyes flashing dangerous gold. You are mine. I am not yours, I snapped. I don't even know you. The whispers in the room were getting louder. I could hear them. Who is she? Why is he talking to the planner? Is she in trouble? Look at her dress. It's off the rack. The humiliation washed over me like a wave of ice water. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was a spectacle. I was the entertainment for the evening. The king's little dalliance. The court jester. I felt small. I felt stupid. I felt exposed. I can't do this, I whispered, shaking my head. I have to go. Cleo, stay. It was a command. The alpha tone slipped out, heavy and compelling. My spine stiffened. If he had asked, I might have hesitated. But he ordered. And if there was one thing Cyrus, king or not, should have known about me, it was that I didn't do well with orders. Go to hell, I said. The gasp from the crowd sucked the air out of the room. I had just sworn at the king. I was probably going to be executed. I didn't care. I turned on my heel and ran. I didn't walk. I sprinted. I hiked up my blue gown and bolted for the service doors. I pushed past a stunned waiter, nearly knocking a tray of champagne out of his hands, and burst into the kitchen. Cleo! Cyrus's roar shook the walls. I didn't stop. I ran past the chefs, past the ovens, and kicked open the back exit that led to the gardens. The cool night air hit my face, drying the tears on my cheeks. I needed to get to my car. I needed to go home, pack a bag, and move to a different continent. Behind me, the ballroom erupted into chaos. Sire, you cannot leave the procession. Secure the exits. My king! I heard heavy doors slam open. I heard the thunder of boots on stone. Stop! Cyrus bellowed, his voice amplified by pure alpha dominance. No one follows me. Stay back. He was coming. I ran faster, my heels sinking into the manicured grass of the royal gardens. I made it to the stone fountain in the center of the courtyard before my breath gave out. I stopped, clutching my side, gasping for air. Cleo! I spun around. Cyrus was storming across the grass. He looked like a nightmare. His cape was billowing behind him. He looked terrifyingly fast, closing the distance between us in seconds. Stay away from me! I screamed, backing up until my legs hit the stone rim of the fountain. Stop running! He shouted, skidding to a halt 10 feet away. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving beneath the medals. I command you to stop running from me. You don't get to command me! I yelled back, throwing my hands up. You're not my king. You're just a liar in a fancy suit. I am your king, he roared, the control finally snapping. And I am the man who loves you. You don't get to separate them. I just did! He stared at me, his chest rising and falling. The silence of the garden was heavy, broken only by the distant sound of the confused party inside and our ragged breathing. You lied to me, I said, my voice breaking. For a week, you looked me in the eye and lied. I had to. Why? Because you didn't trust me? Because I didn't want to lose you. Chapter 16. The Pursuit. Lose me? I laughed, a harsh, hysterical sound. You never had me, Cyrus. You had a fantasy. You were playing undercover boss, and I was the prop. That is not true, he growled, stepping forward. Stay back. I pointed a finger at him. Don't you dare come closer with all that metal on you. He stopped. He looked down at his chest, at the gold sash, the medals of honor, the heavy chain of office. He looked at them like they were covered in acid. This? He asked, grabbing the crimson sash. This is what you hate? The symbols? I hate that you hid behind them, I said. I hate that you used them to hide from me. Cyrus's face twisted in agony. I didn't use them to hide. I used the silence to find you. Cleo, every day of my life, people see the crown. They see the Alpha. They don't see me.
You were the first person in 10 years to look at me and see a man who didn't know how to fix a sink. He ripped the sash off. With a violent tear of fabric, he pulled the silk ceremonial sash over his head and threw it onto the grass. Cyrus, what are you doing? I gasped. He didn't answer. His hands went to the heavy gold chain around his neck, the symbol of his lineage, worth more than my entire apartment building. He unclasped it and dropped it. It hit the grass with a heavy thump. You want the liar gone? He shouted, his voice raw. Fine. He started unclasping the medals, the Star of Valor, the Order of the Wolf. He ripped them off his jacket, tossing them aside like garbage. Cyrus, stop! I took a step forward. That's treason or something. You can't throw the crown jewels on the ground. I don't care about the jewels. He grabbed the collar of his stiff military jacket. I don't care about the titles. I don't care about the kingdom if I have to rule it without you. He tore the jacket off. Buttons popped, pinging off the stone fountain. He shrugged the heavy garment off his shoulders and let it fall, leaving him in just his white dress shirt and black trousers. He stood there, chest heaving, stripped of his regalia. He looked wild, desperate. He reached up and grabbed the iron crown on his head. My eyes widened. Cyrus, don't. I am not a king to you, he said, his voice dropping to a jagged whisper. I am just Cyrus, the man who loves you, the man who would burn this entire palace to the ground if it meant you would let him hold you again. He held the crown in his hand, looking at it with disdain, then looked at me. Tell me who I am, Cleo, he pleaded. Am I your king, or am I your handyman? I looked at him. He was shivering slightly in the cool air, stripped of his armor, offering me his dignity on a silver platter. He had desecrated his own royal image just to prove a point to me. My anger didn't vanish, but it cracked. Underneath it, the love I had been trying to strangle rushed back in. You're an idiot, I choked out, tears finally spilling over. He dropped the crown. It rolled into the grass. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides. He didn't command this time. He fell to his knees. The Alpha King, the ruler of the continent, dropped to his knees in the dirt in front of me. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pressing his face against my stomach, holding on to me like I was the only solid thing in a spinning world. I am an idiot,
he muffled into my dress. I am a fool, but I am yours. Please, Cleo, don't run. Punish me, yell at me, make me fix every pipe in the city, but don't leave. I looked down at him. My hands hovered over his dark hair. Behind us, the garden doors burst open. There he is! Secure the area! Guards poured into the garden, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the dark. They froze when they saw the scene. The discarded crown, the jacket on the ground, the king on his knees, clinging to the event planner. "Sire?" the captain of the guard whispered, horrified. Cyrus didn't let go. He didn't even look at them. He tightened his grip on me, burying his face deeper into the fabric of my dress. "Tell them to leave," he whispered to me. "What?" "You're the boss, Cleo," he said, his voice shaking. "Command me. Command them. If you want me to get up, you have to tell me." I looked at the guards. I looked at the man trembling at my feet. The choice was mine. I could walk away and leave him in the ruin of his own making. Or I could accept the job I never applied for. I took a deep breath, placed my hand on his head, and looked the captain of the guard in the eye. "He's busy," I announced, my voice ringing clear in the night air. "We're in a meeting. Leave us." Chapter 17. The Public Claim. The captain of the guard didn't hesitate. He looked at me, the woman with mascara running down her face and a hem stained with grass. And then he looked at his king, who was currently embracing my waist like a lifeline. He saluted, sharp, crisp, and without a single question. "As you wish, ma'am," the captain barked. He turned to his squad. "Move out! The king is in conference." The guards retreated, vanishing back into the shadows of the palace, leaving us alone in the moonlit silence of the garden. I looked down at Cyrus. He hadn't moved. He was breathing in the scent of my dress, his shoulders shaking with the aftershocks of his emotional nuclear explosion. "Get up, Cyrus," I whispered, my hand resting tentatively on his dark, messy hair. "You're ruining your trousers, and that grass stain is never coming out." He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He pulled back, looking up at me. His face was open, unguarded, and painfully beautiful. "I can buy new trousers," he rasped. "I can buy 1,000 trousers. I can't buy you." "Good," I sniffed, wiping my nose with the back of my hand. "Because I'm expensive, and I have very high standards for plumbing maintenance." A genuine smile broke across his face, the first real one since he'd walked down those stairs. He slowly got to his feet, towering over me again, but the dynamic had shifted. He wasn't looming, he was leaning. He looked around at the debris of his royalty scattered on the lawn, the sash, the jacket, the heavy iron crown lying sideways in a patch of clover. "I made a mess," he noted dryly. "You usually do," I said. I bent down and picked up the crown. It was heavier than it looked. Cold, ancient iron. I brushed a blade of grass off one of the spikes. "Here, put it back on." He recoiled slightly. "I don't want it." "Put it on," I insisted, shoving it against his chest. "You're the king, Cyrus. You can't just quit because you had a bad date. Your people need you. I need you to be who you are." He stared at the crown, then at me. "You want me to be the king." "I want you to be Cyrus," I corrected. "And Cyrus happens to be the king. You can be both. Just maybe don't lie about the plumbing skills next time." He took the crown. He didn't put it on immediately. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and sash, shrugging them back on with a careless grace. He left the jacket unbuttoned. He left the sash loose. He looked like a king who had just fought a war and won. He placed the crown back on his head, but his eyes never left mine. "We have to go back in there," he said. My stomach plummeted. No way. I can't face them. Cyrus, I ran out of the room. I screamed at you. They think I'm crazy. "Let them think what they want," he said, extending his hand. "If you walk in with me, they won't dare say a word." "They're judging me," I whispered, looking at the bright lights of the ballroom doors. "I'm just the event planner. I don't belong in your world." "You built this world," he said fiercely, gesturing to the palace. "You organized the gala. You fixed the flowers. You managed the chaos. Cleo, you have been ruling this palace for a week. You just didn't realize it." He waited. His hand was steady. I took a deep breath. I thought about the way he had looked on his knees. I thought about the fixing you promise. I took his hand. "Okay," I said, "but if anyone sneers at me, I'm increasing their catering bill." He grinned. "Deal." We walked back to the doors. Cyrus didn't sneak in. He kicked the doors open with his boot, creating a second, equally dramatic entrance. The ballroom went deathly silent. Again. 500 faces turned toward us. The music had stopped. The whispers died. They took in the sight of their king, disheveled, jacket unbuttoned, grass stains on his knees, holding the hand of the frazzled event planner. We walked to the center of the room. I held my head high, channeling every ounce of fake-it-till-you-make-it energy I possessed. Suddenly, I stumbled. My left heel, damaged from the sprint through the garden, finally gave up. The strap snapped. My ankle rolled. Gasps echoed through the room. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the humiliation of hitting the floor. I didn't fall. Cyrus caught me. But he didn't just catch me. He didn't pull me up and brush it off. He stopped the entire procession. In the dead center of the ballroom, under the $1 million chandelier, the Alpha King released my hand and dropped to one knee. The room inhaled as one, a collective gasp of shock. Is he proposing? Cyrus didn't pull out a ring. He reached for my foot. "Cyrus, get up!" I hissed, my face burning. "What are you doing?" He ignored me. With gentle, deliberate movements, he slid my broken shoe off. He placed it on the floor. Then he took my bare foot and rested it on his knee, brushing away a speck of dirt from my heel. He looked up, addressing the room. His voice didn't need a microphone. It was the voice of the Alpha, booming with absolute authority. "This woman," Cyrus announced, his hand resting protectively over my ankle, "commanded me to fix a sink." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I failed," Cyrus continued, a smirk playing on his lips as he looked at me. "I flooded her kitchen. I broke her pipes. I was incompetent." He paused, letting the admission sink in. The elite were stunned. Their perfect king admitting failure? "She didn't care about my title," Cyrus said, his voice softening, turning intimate despite the audience. "She yelled at me. She demanded better. She treated me like a man, not a monument." He stood up slowly, taking my hand and pulling me flush against his chest. He looked at the council, at the press, at the world. "You all bow because you have to," he snarled softly. "She commanded me because she is strong enough to lead. And from this moment on, her command is my command." He looked down at me, his gold eyes burning with pride. "So," he whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch, "what are your orders, my queen? Shall we continue the dance, or shall we go home and order a real plumber?" Chapter 18.
The new contract. Dance, I had whispered to him in the center of the silent ballroom. And we did. We danced until my feet bled, until the gossip columnists ran out of ink, and until every person in that room understood that the Alpha King wasn't just ruling a kingdom. He was ruled by the woman in the blue dress. That was 4 weeks ago. Tonight, the setting was different, but the chaos was eerily familiar. "Cyrus!" I yelled, staring in horror at the kitchen island of the royal penthouse. "Tell me why there is water pooling around the espresso machine? Again?" I was standing in the most expensive kitchen in the city. The countertops were made of rare obsidian. The appliances were imported from countries I couldn't pronounce. And yet, there was a puddle. A growing, aggressive puddle that was inching dangerously close to my laptop. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. Cyrus appeared in the doorway. He wasn't wearing his crown or his military dress uniform. He was wearing gray sweatpants that hung low on his hips and a black t-shirt that was stretched tight across his chest. He looked sleepy, rumpled, and unfairly devastating. "You screamed?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "Is it an assassin?" "Worse." I pointed at the counter. "It's a leak." Cyrus froze. He looked at the water. He looked at me. A slow, dangerous grin spread across his face. The same smirk he had worn the day I dragged him into my apartment. "A leak," he repeated, his voice dropping to that husky, playful growl. "Well, we know the protocol for this." He started to roll up his sleeves. "Don't you dare," I warned, grabbing a towel to dam the flood. "Do not touch the pipes, Cyrus. I mean it. We live in a palace now. We have staff. We have actual, certified professionals who know that righty-tighty is a rule, not a suggestion." "I fixed your sink," he argued, walking over to me. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. His body heat was a furnace against my back. "You brute-forced my sink into submission," I corrected, leaning back into him despite myself. "And then you flooded the cabinet 3 times. "But I got the girl," he murmured against my neck, pressing a kiss to the sensitive spot just below my ear. "So I'd say it was a successful operation." I shivered, the towel slipping from my hand. "You're impossible." "I'm dedicated." He spun me around, hopping me up onto the dry part of the counter, a move that was quickly becoming our signature. He settled between my legs, his hands resting possessively on my thighs. "So, what are my orders, my queen? Do you want me to intimidate the water? I can issue a royal decree banning all liquids from the penthouse." I laughed, running my hands through his messy hair. "I want you to admit defeat. Admit that you are the king of the shifters, the warlord of the north, and absolutely terrible at home repair." He feigned offense. "I am a man of the people, Cleo. I work with my hands." "You work with your ego," I teased, tracing the line of his jaw. Life had changed drastically in the last month. The press had gone wild. The Cinderella event planner headlines were everywhere. People expected me to be a damsel, overwhelmed by the royal life. Instead, I had reorganized the palace staff schedules, cut the floral budget by 30%, and terrified the royal council by wearing pantsuits to formal meetings. And Cyrus? He thrived on it. He loved watching me work. He loved watching me command his generals. He loved that when we came home to this penthouse, the crowns came off, and I was the one telling him to pick up his socks. "The water is still dripping," I pointed out, glancing over his shoulder. Cyrus didn't look. He tightened his grip on me. Let it drip. Cyrus, the obsidian, it stains. I'll buy new obsidian. You can't just buy your way out of problems. Watch me. He smirked, leaning in until his lips were hovering millimeters from mine. I have infinite resources, Cleo, and right now I am investing all of them in distracting you. I am working, I whispered, though my resolve was melting faster than the ice in the freezer. I have a charity gala to plan for next week. Delegate it. I don't trust anyone else to do it right. Then I'll cancel it. I'll cancel the gala. I'll cancel the week. I'll declare a national holiday dedicated to staying in bed. I rolled my eyes. You are a tyrant. I am a man in love, he corrected softly. There is a difference. He kissed me then, slow and deep, a kiss that tasted of coffee and promise. It was the kind of kiss that made the rest of the world fade away. The leaks, the politics, the expectations. It was just us, just Cyrus and Cleo. When he pulled back, he looked at the puddle again. The water was now dripping onto the floor with a rhythmic splat, splat, splat. He sighed, a long, dramatic sound of surrender. Fine, he grumbled. You win. He reached into his pocket. How he had a phone in sweatpants I'd never know, and pulled it out. He tapped a few buttons and held it to his ear. Who are you calling? I asked, breathless. The Royal Guard? No, he said, his golden eyes dancing with amusement. I'm calling Mario. Mario? The head of maintenance, the actual plumber. He waited for the line to connect, his other hand stroking my knee. Mario, Cyrus said into the phone, his voice switching effortlessly to his commanding alpha tone. The penthouse kitchen. There is a leak. Yes. Again. He listened for a moment, then laughed. No, I didn't touch it this time, he promised. Send someone up. Immediately. He hung up and tossed the phone onto the counter, well away from the water. Happy? He asked. Ecstatic. I smiled. See? Was that so hard, admitting you need a professional? It was agonizing, he deadpanned. My pride is in tatters. I'll make it up to you. Oh? He raised an eyebrow, stepping closer, closing the tiny gap between us again.
And how do you plan to do that? I wrapped my legs around his waist, pulling him in until there was no air left between us. Well, I whispered, biting my lip. Since the plumber is coming to fix the sink, I suppose that frees up your schedule. Cyrus groaned, a low, hungry sound that vibrated through my chest. He scooped me up off the counter, ignoring the water, ignoring the mess, ignoring the kingdom waiting outside our door. The plumber can have the sink, he growled, carrying me toward the bedroom. I have a queen to worship. Quick favor, don't go anywhere yet. If you thought mistaking the king for a plumber was awkward, the next story is catastrophic. I accidentally walked in on the Alpha King changing, and he didn't cover up. He just locked the door. Click the video on your screen right now. This mistake changes everything.